right, guys, welcome back to the Command Your Brand show. I'm your host, Alex Latronico, brand ambassador of Command Your Brand, and we help CEOs and founders to get their messages out onto top podcasts. Grab our new book, ranked #1 PR book on Amazon at bestpodcastbook.com. And a reminder before we get into today's conversation to comment on, like this video, and smash the subscribe button if you want to command your brand through the power of podcasting. And over here, who I have today, I have Dr. Richard Jacoby. He's a doctor of pediatric medicine, and he's a globally sought-after peripheral nerve surgeon and a past president of the Association of Extremity Nerve Surgeons. He trained under Nobel-nominated Dr. A. Lee Dellon at Johns Hopkins and legendary Dr. John Cook, MD, PhD at Stanford. And he's recognized as a leading authority in nerve surgery and metabolic medicine. Dr. Jacoby developed the global compression theory, linking nerve compression, metabolism, and chronic disease. Author of Sugar Crush and Unglued, his upcoming book, The Terminal Zone, explores stem cell and regenerative medicine. Continuing the legacy of Silas Weir Mitchell, he advances modern neurology through precision surgery, metabolic insight, and innovation. Dr. Jacoby trained with stem cell pioneer Dr. Neil Reardon in Scottsdale, Arizona, and worked alongside him in clinical applications in Panama. I'd like to welcome everybody to Dr. Richard Jacoby.
Nice to be here, Alex. Looking forward to it. Be provocative, because this is a very provocative and secret conspiracy theory we got out there. Because last week we flipped up the
Yes, I noticed that.
down
I
the
think it's
food
about
pyramid.
time that we finally did something about that instead of having sugar as our main diet, so to speak.
Kind of amazing. Couple $trillion later, what's a couple trillion here and there? And a couple thousand, hundreds of thousand people dying.
Oh, yeah.
Little trivia
Excuse
there,
me.
huh?
I always found it very interesting myself growing up. I always knew that there was something just innately wrong with the food pyramid. It just didn't make sense to me that we would eat so many breads, carbs, and sugars as our main energy source, where it's very obvious that protein is what helps you with build muscles and longevity. So the food pyramid itself never made any sense to me. And at a very young age, I always thought it was itself just a scam.
Well, it is a scam. So I always tried to be nice about that. You know, there's different science, and the more we learn, the more we've been deceived. I just did a podcast this morning, by the way, on sweet deception and about the NFL and all the injuries they have up in San Francisco with the 49ers. That kind of dovetails to what I'm talking about. But I'm glad you recognize that the food pyramid was somewhat unusual to you as you grew up. Well, you were taught that by the NEA. Isn't that interesting? National Education Association. They taught you a fraud because it was passed down to you from the USDA, another government agency. And they fed you the food that you were taxed on. They purposely want to make you sick. I'm not sure what the answer is there, but we certainly did a good job. If you follow the food pyramid, you would start out with colicky babies because they're eating sugar formula instead of breast milk, which is fat. And then you develop all your acne as a teenager. And the mom had a migraine headache. And your grandfather had Alzheimer's. And eventually your mother developed breast cancer. That's all sugar. I don't think that's a trivial question. I think it's a very extraordinary and profound question. It needs to be answered. And I tried to answer that in my two books. And my first book, which really, it came out 10 years ago. This is not a new story to me. I started with this.
Right.
I've been around a long time. It's obvious. In 1981, when I was asked a very provocative question by a Surgeon General of the country of Taiwan, and he invited me to Taiwan to figure out why they had diabetes. That was 1981. He had a question. Well, I did too, but I didn't know the answer. It's sugar. Because as he asked me that question, I said, what's the Mandarin word for diabetes in in Mandarin. And he said, diabetes. I said, well, that's a Greek word. Don't you have your own word? No, because they didn't have the disease. Language is very important. And so that got me really thinking about what the hell is going on with our country. And it's sugar. But I didn't know that at that time. So that's why I wrote these books. So that's a really good
Mhm.
question, a good provocative question. Why did that food pyramid remain in plain sight, taught to our kids,
Mhm.
killing them, making them sick?
Yeah,
That's the real question.
interesting.
And I know the answer, by the way, in my new book, The
Interesting.
Terminal
Yeah, I would
Zone.
definitely like to
Oh,
get
yeah.
some answers on it because, it's very interesting. I can be a bit conspiratorial sometimes, and I just find things a bit suspicious every once in a while. And it just does seem a little bit strange to me that we've had this food pyramid promoting so much sugar, so much carbs, where the effects of it were pretty obvious. And then, of course, it makes it very hard for me to assume that it was just a mistake and that it's not intentionally designed when we look at how much money do we make in the health industry. How many billions of dollars do we have going in there to solve problems that looks like was purposely generated with in our generations, with our diets, the different chemicals that we use everywhere. And it makes it very hard for me to come up with a compelling reason that it was all just kind of a mistake.
Beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
You are my audience, by the way. I think the zeitgeist is, a lot of people like to use that word, framing something that's happening to a generation and feels conspiratorial. And then over time, you look back and you go, oh, that was so obvious. But we didn't know it while we were going through it. And you just expressed one of the absolute tenets of my new book, The Terminal Zone. That book is for you to answer the questions you had in the back of your mind. That's what it's about. It wasn't happenstance, it was purposeful, absolutely purposeful. So everybody's involved in it, from our universities, our government. I mean, go back, and you probably don't know this name,
It sounds
George
vaguely
McGovern.
familiar, but I
Do
don't
you
have a
know that
connotation
name?
to it.
Well,
Mm,
well, he ran for president. He was the
okay.
senator from Dakotas. Well, they grow a lot of wheat there. They couldn't sell this shit. So he came up with a really cool idea. Let's call it food for peace. In other words, taxpayer would buy the wheat they couldn't sell and give it away free to
Hmm,
different countries.
okay.
Aren't we wonderful people? Yeah, that was good. So one of the countries was Afghanistan. They grew wheat. We wiped that out. So they started growing poppy seeds and heroin, and you know the rest of the story. Just from one little government intervention. I loved his name, Mick Government.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Mick Donalds. You couldn't make this up, but he's a real guy, and he got the dietary guidelines going. He brought in these stooges. Well, excuse me. Did I use the word stooges? He brought in the best of the best from Harvard, Dr. Sturms. Oh, he came in and said, Dr. Atkins, it was out, or he had a diet, eat fat, eat protein, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, makes sense. And they got rid of him and they brought this guy from Harvard. He said, oh, no, he's crazy. You got to eat the food pyramid. Well, Kraft Food gave him $5 million when he got home for his
Yeah,
laboratory.
of course.
Yeah, his laboratory. These are professors of the best universities we have. And guess what? Most of them
Yeah.
are in on the deal. And I have the proof of that. That's the shocking story. Who are they? Where did they get their money from? And who's really benefiting here? And I
Mm-hmm.
think the country understands that. America is fat and sick. Anybody is contradicting that sentence, send them to me.
Uh,
Okay?
but
So I'm sorry,
that's
I've
totally
dominated
fine.
this whole
Honestly, you
thing. Go ahead
mentioned
and
that,
ask
and
me
I go,
another
"Ooh, I would
question.
love to see that kind of debate. I think it would be wildly entertaining." Yeah, that's the thing that frustrates me because as a kid
Oh,
growing
yeah.
up, I was always very interested in the sciences, and then I start seeing all of these scientific recommendations, and then it's just very interesting. I'm like, well, this just seems very contrary to what you would think would be the case. And then I get a little bit older and wiser and start realizing, What science can we actually trust where what 95% of the studies are coming out are basically paid for people that are wanting to get a specific result? I mean, my favorite example goes to do you remember what was it, the food index at Tufts University? I was flabbergasted where a
Yeah.
bowl of
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Cheerios was ranked
Yeah.
healthier than a steak. I'm like, there's just no way. This has to be paid for.
And it was, well, yeah, that was at Tufts. That was, I forget the guy's name, but he's well known
Mm,
in the nutrition industry, well known by the people that pay big bucks to get those kind of stories. Another one just came out from, it was last year from Harvard. And I thought this was interesting because a friend of mine sent me the article and I read it and it said 2 helpings of meat a week will cause 43% increase in diabetes. And I read it and I go, what? This was written by
wow.
Harvard scientists. So I so it was in the journal of nutrition. So I went to the journal and looked it up. Who funded who funded the study? Big farming, big
Hmm.
pharma, all the big guys. So then I unpacked the article, and their article was written very well. And it took me in. I said, whoa, maybe I have it wrong. I'm eating too much meat. Well, really, what they said, eating 2 helpings of meat a week increased diabetes by 43%. But really, what they were saying is when you think about it, let's say there's 21
Hmm.
meals a week, 3 a day for 7 days, right? If you eliminated all the meat from your diet down to two,
Oh,
yes, you
wow.
absolutely would have diabetes. Is
That's
that deception
absolutely
or outright
crazy.
fraud?
I That is so interesting, because I'd always think about like adding data and kind of pad things on, but no, they're technically telling the truth. If you only eat two servings, that means you have to fill up everything else with bread. Holy cow!
Absolutely. Are these guys good or what? That's why they get such big bucks. They are smart
Yeah, no, it's
guys,
basically
and
become an
they're
ad
also
agency at
crooks.
this point in time.
Well, maybe that's what Harvard is. Come to us and we will promote your product.
Interesting.
But unfortunately, there are a lot of good scientists out there, and I've worked with a lot of them, but they don't get a grant unless they, tell
Mm,
you the narrative. Who's paying the bills? And I think the public now understands that, but they don't know the details. And in my two books, I go really deep into the details. My new book
mhm,
is beyond shocking. Now, I like Dr. Perlmutter, and I'm going to shout out to him. He's on my book in 2010.
hmm.
I've never spoken to him. Dr. Perlmutter, we need to have a conversation because you endorse
Oh,
the book, but you
interesting.
don't agree with it. Why is that?
Hmm,
Isn't that interesting? Now, I'm not, and I love Dr. Perlmutter's podcast. He's a brilliant guy, very
mhm,
articulate and well meaning, but he's a neurologist,
mm,
and I'm not. I'm a podiatrist. Wow. So what's the problem here? Well, he writes prescription for a living.
mhm.
Let's pause on that. I guess he could do surgery like I do, but he has to press pretty hard with his ballpoint pen to do it.
Okay.
He's not trained to do surgery. Okay. And I guess maybe he could give an injection with it, but that's another story. He knows his biochemistry, he knows supplements, he knows neurology,
Hmm,
but he doesn't know what I know. He doesn't. He couldn't. Because I was trained by a very controversial guy. And this is another thing that
mhm,
Joe Rogan will love this. I'm talking to you, Joe, and your MMA fighters. And he
mhm,
loves stem cells. We'll get into that a little later. But the Perlmutter's is not a surgeon, but Dr. Dellon is. Dr. Dellon's
okay.
professor of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. Pretty
Mhm,
good place, right, when you think, and probably number one or two in the world. Okay, and he's the guy. And he wrote a lot of papers. He trained me about 25 years ago in peripheral nerve surgery. And he has spent his entire life trying to dispel
Hmm.
the story that Perlmutter's talking about. Because Perlmutter can't see what Dr. Dillon's doing, because he's not a surgeon. I am. Dr. Dillon showed me his work. I read his textbooks at least 7 times. And then I trained with him, and I looked at the nerve from his point of view,
Hmm.
under magnification. And I went, oh my God, there it is. And what did I see? I saw that nerves were being compressed
Oh.
by the action of sugar chemically. Carpal tunnel. Carpal tunnel, that's what it is. Ulnar tunnel, that's the elbow. He applied that to the lower extremity. Well, neurologists like Perlmutter went, oh my God, this is insane. And his buddy, I say buddy, one of the top neurologists in the world,
Hmm.
and this is a funny name, but it is his name, Peter
Okay.
Dick. That's his name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. DYCK. #1 world in Mayo Clinic, Rochester. He was outraged about Dillon's surgical decompression of nerves to the point that he put out a bulletin throughout the internet on this. Dr. Dillon's dangerous. No, Dr. Dillon should
Hmm.
get the Nobel Prize for his work. He's written 800 articles, 4 textbooks, hundreds of chapters in medical books. They won't listen to him because all the
Hmm.
papers are written by Big Pharma. That's why the food pyramid is
Interesting.
implicated. The food pyramid, USDA, I'm reading some
Mm-hmm.
of the book to you, the old books, but I didn't know this. The National Institute of Health, what agency of the government do you think that's under? Time's up. You won't get the answer. The
Okay.
Farm Bill.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, follow the money. Okay, not directly, but somewhere that trillion, but it's $1 trillion, by the way. We don't use B word anymore. We use the T word. So $1 trillion filters down through the National Institute of Health. What I'm talking about, USDA,
Okay.
NEA, and
Oh yeah.
NIH. Hit a lot of big ones, aren't we? Yeah. And so then the money goes to, oh, by the way, Dr. Fauci's wife is the ethics director. What?
And then
Yeah. So the money is handed out to the universities. What do you want to study? I want to study that sugar and glyphosate and all those Monsanto chemicals are dangerous. No, 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 no,
mm-hmm.
no. Doesn't get studied. The grant goes to the
Right.
person who gives the answer they want. $1 trillion. I don't know what their budget is, but it's huge. I think they got 40,000 employees, unless Trump fired them all
Probably.
yesterday, which he probably should.
No, it's just
Anyway,
the whole
go
thing is
ahead.
just very interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
and then we wonder why government trust is at an all-time low. It's just
Well, thank
yeah.
God we finally came to our senses. Now, here's another gal that you may, well, you probably have heard her,
Again, the
Nina
name's familiar, but
Teicholz. Have you heard of her? Yeah, she wrote the
okay.
book Big Fat Surprise. And she's the #1 person behind the advisory group, which I'm on. I'm on her committee, but she's the one that got the food pyramid flipped upside down. She is the one.
It's
She probably saved America. She saved more lives than General MacArthur.
that is really amazing to hear. Yeah, no, I thought it was such a fabulous victory when I saw that food pyramid finally turned upside down. I thought it was just amazing.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to hear. Yeah, and I think everybody wants to understand what's behind that because, you know, the media likes to indoctrinate people into
Mm-hmm.
the narrative. Now, they were outraged with
Oh yeah.
RFK doing that. Can you imagine? Oh, yeah. And see, and even if you're on the left or the right, which half of
Mm-hmm.
America's, how it's split, this is common ground. I think everybody, no matter what your political persuasion is, you pick up a spoonful of Cheerios, and you got to think,
Mm-hmm.
have I been
Oh yeah.
deceived?
Oh.
Yeah, we all have.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I
we all
agree,
have.
and it's
No
interesting
question
because
about it.
even with the whole right and left argument and things like that, I honestly believe it. But specifically with things like this, I mean, the fact that nothing's changed in, I don't even remember when the first food pyramid was put up, but I'd say at least 50 years that we've been being fed this lie. Uh,
I looked that
92.
up the
Okay.
other day. I think
Oh,
it was
oh, it's funny.
1992,
Same year I was
actually.
born.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's the same year you were born, and guess what? I wasn't. So
Yeah.
I go way back before that. So interesting, and this is good for your audience in particular, because you grew up in fiat money and fiat
Mm.
food, fake money. And it's interesting because my secretary was sitting here, and every time I say something, she looks at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, don't you remember General Eisenhower? Who's he?" Anyway, she's sitting here listening, laughing. So your generation, and I'm going to ask you this
Hmm.
question because I'm going to hear what your answer is. Because if I ask this to my generation, if you ate a grapefruit as a kid, would what would you do with it? First of all, what would you put anything on the grapefruit?
It's interesting. I think with knowing, I actually don't know if I would. Maybe a little bit of sugar, in all honesty. If I were to think about it, I mean, now knowing how much I'm not a big fan of sugar, I'd probably just eat it straight, but probably as a kid, I'd probably put some sugar on it.
Interesting you even pondered that question. My generation absolutely had to put
Mm,
sugar, or some people put salt on it. You know why? It was unpalatable. It had no sugar in it. You couldn't eat it. Fruit doesn't have sugar naturally, other than a couple
hmm.
weeks in the year.
Yeah.
Let me repeat that. That's amazing. So, Richard Johnson, who is a professor up in Colorado, and he wrote a book called Nature's Out to Make You Fat. And he's on the Nutrition Coalition with myself and Dr. Tychols
Mm,
now. She got her PhD in nutrition. And his thesis is this: human beings do not eat fruit. But that's
hmm.
on the food pyramid, right in that next layer, right? Fruit is sugar, but it wasn't naturally sugar. Give you an example. A bear hibernates, loses all its fat, right? Comes out of the
Berries.
cave. What's the
Yeah.
first thing it eats? Berries, tons of berries. Why? To make himself fat again.
Right.
That's the only way you can do it. Because if you eat fruit, which has fructose and glucose, then it spikes your insulin.
Hmm.
And what's the result? You get fat, what nature intended for you to be. And then when the fruit goes away, then the bear goes back to its carnivore ways, eats salmon. Now, I'm sure, if I am sure, if a Safeway was there back as, a couple thousand years ago, he would go to the Safeway just like
Mhm.
every other bear in our community does. And bears are doing that. They're raiding houses. Why? They want the sugar, just like you and I do. So that's all the negative stuff. Or is that positive? I'm not
Right.
sure. Negative, positive, just the truth. And then we have, in my new book, um, The Terminal Zone, I talk about all those issues and then some conspiracy, which is evolving as not
Mhm.
conspiracy, just fraud, like everything else. But stem cells, why has the government blocked this?
Hmm.
Do you know why?
Of course.
Because it works.
Of course.
Of course, wouldn't want something. So, and I got a whole bunch of blockbuster documents. One of which is a public document, is U.S.
Mm,
Senate hearing 2003. 2003. So we're roughly, that's a
Mm-hmm.
quarter of a century ago, right? Roughly. John McCain,
Mm-hmm.
Arizona native, Senator John McCain. And he convened a non embryonic stem cell hearing, U.S. Senate. And he disclosed or he interviewed all these scientists. There were about 19, 62 pages. And I read it. Most people don't even know it exists. What do you think the senators said about stem cells a quarter of a century ago?
Mm.
This is a miracle, and it's being blocked by the what agency is this is doing this? So the
The FDA.
Food and Drug
Interesting.
FDA. Oh, that's another government agency. So the FDA has the cure,
Can it?
and they don't want you to have it. So listen, NEA, USDA, hate Trump or like Trump,
Mm-hmm.
they're stealing our money.
Mm-hmm.
And they got us all bullshitted. And it's in my book.
Yeah.
And I
No,
got the
I definitely,
documents. You'll be
I definitely need
shocked.
to read that book. Do you know when is the book coming out?
Well, it's in editing right now. And yeah, so that's a slow process. I don't know when,
Okay.
but I finished my portion of it. But I may add that NFL.
Oh,
I
that's right.
started talking about the NFL and 49ers because this is Super Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks. They have the
Mm-hmm.
highest incidence of injuries of all the
I've heard
NFL
about it.
teams.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So the 49ers, NFL, high rate of injuries, especially the Achilles tendon, which I've done a lot of those surgeries. So when I wrote the first book, Sugar Crush, I speculated on those injuries with EMF, which is
Mm-hmm.
your phone. And back then it was 2G, now it's 5G going on 6G. And the public doesn't know this, but when it was 2G, that waveform is about a half a mile long. Now it's a
Mm-hmm.
microwave. And it's just the electromagnetic waves by the the practice field for 49ers, they're just playing in a soup of
Oh,
EMF.
interesting.
Now, how could that cause damage? Well, if you have a lot of sugar in your system, which to get to be 350, 400 pounds, you got to eat sugar all day long. So sugar plus trauma equals dysfunction. That's in my book. Been talking about it for 20 years, 25 years. But Martin Paul, who taught me that, is a physicist and a chemist, and he testified before the Senate as well. He said, this is dangerous. Now you're going to see it Super Bowl day if they make it, because those Achilles tendons are just popping all over the place. That's your cell phone.
It's
Can you
so
imagine that?
interesting.
Along with sugar, that perfect storm. So I got a lot of stuff in here. Perlmutter doesn't know this, and he may not agree with it. I hope he doesn't agree with it. I want to
Mm-hmm.
debate him. I love to debate Joe Rogan, not debate him. Get this information out
Mm-hmm.
to the public. But I need to have that right person who is passionate about what they do and passionate about the truth. I want to be attacked. I have the evidence. And there is no other book on the market ever written or presently written. Oh, they say don't eat sugar, this, that. No, that's not what
Hmm.
I'm about. I know the biochemistry. I work with the best. Dr. John Cook, number one scientist in the world when he was there at Stanford. He taught me the biochemistry of nerves. That's not, that's a nice place up there close to the 49ers, by
Hmm.
the way. But he is also the world's leading authority on stem cells. So we have a lot of information in these books that the public needs
Yeah.
to know. They've
Oh,
been
yeah.
screwed. They've been robbed and screwed.
Yeah. No, I definitely
That's
feel
the
it.
title of my next book. Yeah.
That No, I know it's just so interesting because when I look at stem cells, and it's funny because I have so many questions I want to ask you, but you're mentioning the stem cells, and I'm so curious about it because I know from when I was a kid, I remember almost when the conversations were kind of coming about in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, there was a whole buzz about stem cells. I even talked about it in school to some degree, and and all I can remember are just this one black propaganda. I call it black propaganda campaign against the stem cells. Because it was pitched as like, hey, like this is a miracle thing. It could turn into whatever cell your body needs to help regenerate itself. But gosh, what was it? And I'm now curious to know what the truth is about it because I haven't done much homework into stem cells myself. But I think they said something like the reason why we can't do stem cells or why stem cells are so controversial is because it comes from, I think, babies, like unborn babies, fetuses, something like that. And now with everything that's going on, I'm like, how true is this? I feel like I'm being led a slop full of Honey Nut Cheerios.
Well, read this and you'll get the rest of the story. So the byline is secret science of stem cells that dissolve the effects of sugar. That's what it does. So your
Huh.
question is absolutely spot on. And I have to chuckle. But gee, we were on a great subject there. And this is
Yes.
all, I mean, this is an actual whole podcast on the stem cell portion. And what you articulated is I hear every day. You're not wrong about this. You're absolutely right.
Hmm.
So Bush did that, said, no, you can't use it, blah, blah, blah. So scientists were going, well, we know this stuff works, and they agreed that it's not ethical. So where can we source this from that doesn't harm anybody? And the answer is the umbilical tissue that joins the mom and the fetus. And it's
Huh.
thrown away anyway after birth. So that's called perinatal stem cell. So you have
Interesting.
the uterus, the lining, the placenta, umbilical cord, and the amniotic fluid that surrounds all that. That works like magic, and it doesn't
Interesting.
harm anybody. Amazing.
Hmm.
So your answer is based in conspiracy, which is really true because there was a lot of things going on back then that were a little nefarious, so we say. So then, when that was solved by Dr. Kaplan, was one of the main people,
Mm-hmm.
and he named those mesenchymal stem cells. It's a
Okay.
made up word, by the way, MSCs, because he thought that's what they looked like and that's what they were, and that's where they got their name. But in 2017, he said, it's really not the right word. But let's keep the same acronym, MSC, and call them medicinal signaling cells. And that's more accurate.
Okay.
So, what are those little critters? Well, they're little guys inside the Wharton's jelly. That's the surrounding tissue of the
Mm-hmm.
umbilical cord. And I love words and I love digging deep. Where the hell did that word come from? Who's Wharton? Well, where did John Wharton, 1666? Now, what was this guy doing fooling around with the umbilical cord? So that's probably another story. Okay. But he
Oh,
got
that's an
his name
interesting
on
one.
it. And yeah, this stuff is magic. So that's what we use modern day non embryonic stem cells. But the FDA stepped in 2023 and said, you know, you can use it, but we have a new law we just passed that
Hmm.
umbilical cord, if it's going to be used legally in the United States, it has to be homologous use. And of course, you know what that word means. Not.
Yeah, you lost me there.
Yeah, no one knows that. I knew what the word meant because Dr. Dellum taught me all this stuff. It means like for like the arm is homologous to the leg.
Okay. Okay.
Essentially the same, different function. That's what the
Okay.
word. So they put that in there, and they basically said you can't use Wharton's jelly injection into a joint because it's not the same. You can't do it in a muscle. You can't do it into arteries. You can't do it in this. I where can you use it? Well, if you can find a use that meets that definition, you can use it. Well, there is none. Wait a minute.
I
FDA made a law that if you can meet it, well, they'll probably arrest you if you can meet it. And you can't meet it, you're arrested too. So this is a very serious problem. RFK is battling to get rid of that.
Mhm.
And Utah, of all places, and I say of all places because you wouldn't think this, but there's reason for it. They passed a state law that says anybody with a license to practice any kind of medicine can use stem cells of any kind for anything.
Wow.
Wow. And then that law got passed in Florida as well by a gal by the name of Holly. What was her last name? Olson. Holly Olson. Courageous. She's an RN. She got it passed. FDA stepped in and said, whoa, you may have a state law to practice medicine, which you have the constitutional right to do, by the way. I always thought it
Mhm.
was the federal government. It's not. State right. In the
Okay.
Constitution. They knew these crooks would be coming along from Jefferson on. And he said, no, they're going to corrupt this. And they did. But the FDA, which doesn't have any, they have regulatory authority, but no, what's the word? They have no guns, I guess you could say. They can't arrest you for that. But they
Mhm.
do have control over drugs. So they made non-embryonic stem cells, Wharton's jelly, a drug, which is impossible to do. It's like saying, I'm going to make water a drug and you can't use it unless we give it to you.
Yes, we're gonna ban protein shakes. You're going to need a subscription or a
Right.
prescription to go get a protein shake.
So now we got FDA, state rights, federal government, gun shoot. In my first book, I wrote this piece. That's a long story. I won't tell you, but at the epilogue in the back of the book, I said, I don't know if you remember this play. It's probably before your time.
Mm.
Guns Over Broadway, Woody Allen.
Sounds familiar. Yes,
So I
I've heard of it.
said,
Yeah.
guns over medicine. Because there's going to be a big war. And there is right now. Who has the sovereign right to treat yourself? My answer is myself. I don't
Right.
care what you do. I care what I do. Oh, that sounds very crass, doesn't it? No, it's a libertarian's point of view. I have no right to tell you what to do, and you have no
Mhm.
right to tell me. But we have the government telling both of us what to do.
Yeah.
Got to get rid of these guys.
And the whole thing just always fascinates me. Just to really dig into conspiratorial a little bit more, I'm not sure if you've heard of this or not, but I think I always get the date wrong. But there's an Invention Secrecy Act of like 1960 something, 50 something. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, and I'm just wondering how much that also has a play in with all of these stem cell research and developments, where it's something along the lines of if an invention can cause too much change in an economy or too much of a ripple effect, it gets brushed away.
I hadn't heard of that, but that's worth exploring. I wouldn't doubt it. And
Oh.
in a sense, there's logic to that. Let's take these two issues: stem cells and the manufacture of our food, and big pharma. I mean, it's enormous numbers here. So
Mm-hmm.
last year, I believe medicine and surgery was $4.7 trillion. It's really basically half of our budget. Not half, but I mean, it's way up there.
Yeah.
And if we took big pharma out of the equation, closed half the hospitals because we're using stem cells, and then the other side, we're saying, don't eat that slop they're producing, the food. Oh, that's controlled by the Food and Drug Administration. Interesting. So they haven't done a good job of the food side, obviously, and they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to stop a bad job they're doing with big pharma because they don't work. Those drugs don't work. They mitigate symptoms, and
Mm-hmm.
it's extremely expensive and tons of side effects. And I is one of those doctors. And I was educated, I say, into ignorance, just like everybody else was.
Hmm.
And we've all been subjected to it. So you're right about that. If we did that all of a sudden, the country would collapse. It really would.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could definitely imagine there would be a lot of chaos for sure.
Oh,
But
chaos.
even if we even if we look at it too, though, it makes me interested because it's like, okay, well, obviously, if we're just looking at it from a governmental standpoint, we have to worry about GDP and then the economy moving forward and everything shaking up. But I mean, can you imagine the millions of dollars that we're not spending on taking care of ourselves because we're all healthy and actually being able to apply ourselves fully? What kind of production we'd be capable of?
We'd all certainly be all richer for sure. We wouldn't spend all that money on a wasted, in my case, a wasted generation. But
Hmm?
I got to give you a compliment. I
Hmm.
really do. You're addressing every point that I have in all my books, every point. And your generation, I don't usually think of your generation for this message. I think of my
Hmm.
generation more because they have the Alzheimer's and all that sort of thing, which is all a direct result of what I just said.
Hmm.
But starting with your generation, maybe we can bend the curve, save you some money, save you some pain and anguish, and live a healthy and prosperous life. I mean it. It's a serious subject. You ought to
Hmm.
have your own podcast. I'm going to tell Jeremy, you've got a message for your generation because they want to hear
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's true, and I do think that there is a general shift in my generation, just in general, about the conspiracies. I think conspiratory talk or conspiracy talk and conversations are just becoming the norm. And the questioning of everything that's been kind of going on is going on. There is a building of it. I mean, obviously, for sure, there are some conspiracy theories out there that are just a little bit crazy, but I think there are certain valid things that we do really need to research. And yeah, no, food, drugs, all of that is definitely very high on my list because um, I've mentioned this before in a couple of other podcasts that I've done, but even with myself, I actually had to get a back surgery. I had to get a spinal fusion on my
Oh,
S1 and L5 when I was
oh,
32 or 31. It was like right before my birthday, and it was crazy. I was super healthy one day. Next day, I'm getting ready for work. Can't put on my shoe. And next thing I know, I'm stuck in bed for 3 months because if I tried standing on my leg, my sciatic nerve would explode out in pain after 5 minutes. Or sorry, not even 5 minutes, 5 seconds. I barely had time to walk upstairs to grab a bite to eat before I went back to my bed. And ended up having to get surgery. And it fascinates me because I always think, and maybe this is a little bit wrong side for me to say, but I always thought, back problems and back surgery, that's for older people. I'm 30. Like, what's this? What am I doing getting back surgery? It's like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I'm
so
too young
what
for
kind
this
of
type of
things
thing.
did they do for you conservatively before the back surgery?
Not much, in all honesty. I think first an emergency room charged me $300 for 2 Tylenols. Uh, that was the first
Well, you
step.
can't take that anymore because that causes autism.
Yeah. And then after that, I went to go grab an MRI, saw a spinal specialist, and was told that I needed to get, I think it was a steroid injection to see if it could reduce the swelling. That didn't do anything. And then there we go. Then I was put under and fused my spine right after that. But very little alternate things there.
Had you had any back problems prior to that event?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, I definitely was always a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit painful, but nothing too crazy. I mean, if I stood for hours, at the end of the day, my legs would hurt or my back would be a bit sore, but nothing crazy, nothing debilitating. And then I was told specifically in my case, I had to get the fusion because apparently and I don't know the name of the bone itself, but the bone that's supposed to keep the other vertebrae from shifting, that one just never grew specifically for the L5 and S1. And so it was kind of loose and it didn't have that support to keep it aligned.
So for
And
30 years, didn't have support. And all of a sudden, you had no support.
yeah.
Magic. Well, guess who you're talking to? You're talking to the guy who avoided that surgery. That's when
Oh,
I got crazy involved in stem cell. And I had been dabbling in it for maybe 20 years, but
Mm-hmm.
this was 10 years ago. Now, I played a lot of tennis, and I really, didn't have any injuries per se, but I was on my way to Philadelphia where I trained. Pennsylvania Hospital was one of the places, and I was to give a lecture. You ready for this? On stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how you put your luggage up in the overhead, and it's sometimes not right next to you. It was ahead of me. So as I got out of my seat, I leaned forward to get the bag, and I said, boom, ruptured my L4-5, just like you, but instantly.
Huh.
So we're going to be like two little old ladies talking about our ailment here for a second.
Perfect.
But the pain is so excruciating. It's debilitating. It's life-changing. You'll do anything to fix it, which I was willing to do because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't play sports. I crawled to the office and I saw patients. I would see a patient and they'd tell me how much pain they were in. And I said, oh, yeah, I know about that. I go in the other room, lie down on the floor with my ice bag, take 2 Tylenol. Same thing you were doing. I think I did Motrin, but anything to relieve the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was scheduled for surgery, just like you. And I said to my neurosurgeon, great guy, known him for years. And I said, you ever use stem cells? No, there's not enough research. This is 10 years ago. He's right, there's not. And I said to him, well, I had a freezer full upstairs, and I use it on lots of different ailments, but I've never used it on back. I'm going to do it. So you're crazy. I said, no, I'm in pain. So I went upstairs, went up the elevator because I couldn't walk. You know the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to one of the other doctors in my office, I said, I'm going to mark the spots you need to inject me. He said, what do you mean? I said, you're going to do your first stem cell shot. His hands are like this. I said, I don't care. You just do it. If I could do it, I would have done it myself, but I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So gives me the shot. Okay. And I worked the show, just what we talked about. And it didn't hurt. I mean, and you know, when you're in pain like that, you could cut your arm off. You'll do it.
Oh yeah.
So next day, that I tell this story so many times. Brenda's sitting here; she's heard this 1,000 times, but it's so dramatic and it's so true. And next day, I wake up Thursday. I go, oh, it's not going to work. I got to get the surgery done. Next day, Friday. Is this getting worse? Not better. Saturday. Okay. My epiphany day. And I'm in the kitchen drinking coffee, phone rings. My friend said, why aren't you playing tennis? And of course, you know the story. We're patients now. You don't understand. I can't do that and all this stuff. You're laughing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I said, I can't because, and I put the coffee down. I put my hand on my back and I went, I don't have any pain. What the hell's going on here? I didn't even know it because I was walking like you used to walk, like. And I said, well, give me a second. I said, this is insane. I went outside. I ran around. I came back and I said, what time's tennis? He said 11 o'clock. And that was it 10 years ago.
That's amazing.
I play pickleball every day now.
That's amazing.
I
should have seen you. I should have seen you.
Well, see, that's the point. You should have been given the option. The option is there. They're not telling you.
Yeah.
And these are the best neurosurgeons in the world. Not enough research. Well, they're right because they won't allow it.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't, and I just fully trusted my doctor too. And it's funny because I usually have a little bit of like hesitancy or distrust because, I was raised a bit conspiratorially. But when I saw my doctor, he was like, I think I did some research on him. He was a top, I think, a spinal surgeon for like the Navy SEALs, and I went, oh well, I guess I can't get anything better. That was my first thought process. I'm like, oh, they definitely take care of their specialists at the armed forces. I think I'd have a pretty good luck pulling in this kind of guy. So, yeah, well, there we go. Live and learn. So.
Navy SEALs. I just did a Navy SEALs ankle with stem cells. and I won't tell you the country he came from. He's been on 5 tours, so I'll likely get killed if he like divulge this. So, but anyways, his sugar was what did he tell me? 700. 700. Normal's about 90, right? His was 700. He had a partial amputation on one foot. They sent him to me. Can you save the ankle? And it was like this. I said, I don't know, but we'll try stem cells. He still got his foot. He didn't go to Venezuela, though. I asked him. He said, nobody would love to. But anyway, stem cells, they didn't provide it for him in the military. This is a Navy SEAL.
Interesting.
And he's an asset to the country.
Right.
The only thing you offer him is surgery. I can do that. I can do stem cells. What would I do? I told you, I did stem cells. So do you see how much conspiracy theories I got going on here? And the new one, you're going to have to put me in a, safe house after this one comes out.
It's exciting. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to read that one. I'm going to grab both copies of those books because it's just I have so many questions, and I know I only have you for a limited time, and we could sit here and talk for hours and hours and hours. I think I enjoyed the.
Well, Brenda's hurt. You can talk to Brenda because she's hurt. She knows all the answers too. Because
Perfect.
I harp at her all day long. Yeah.
Now, there was one question I did have earlier that I thought was very interesting because, I was looking at it in regards to peripheral nerve compression, right? So I can see how obviously these nerve compressions contributing to things like neuropathy and chronic inflammation, but how does that contribute to diabetes? I wouldn't think of a correlation between those two things.
Well, that's a Greek word. Diabetes mellitus means in Greek to siphon out sweet water out of your body.
Okay.
That's not a diagnosis. That's an observation. That's how medicine works. So the word glucose, another Greek word, means to adhere, to stick together. It's glue.
Mm-hmm.
So how does sugar, glue, affect the nerves? Biochemically, it compresses the nerve because it shrinks this fascia around it chemically.
Huh.
So it squeezes the nerve. At the same time, that's called the Maillard reaction. Same time, the nerve inside is getting sugar in there and it's pulling sugar into the nerve and causes it to swell. So a nerve going through a tunnel that's shrinking and a nerve that's swelling, we call that compression. That hurts. That's what your back was about. That's all it was. Nerve compression. So if we intervene surgically, yes, we make more space and fuse the vertebrae on either side. Proper thing to do. But wouldn't you rather do stem cell? Or at least try it first. Hey, 80% probably get better. I get 100%. And if you don't, then do the surgery. Pretty simple. And I'll show you the document. Senators McCain, this is a miracle. Well, it's a miracle. The public doesn't know about it. Now, is that a conspiracy? That's a fact. That's a fact.
So fascinating.
And you had a surgery that could have been avoided.
Makes me wonder how many things we could have avoided if we just stopped suppressing helpful ideas.
Get the criminals out of our lives. We gave them the agencies to take care of it in good faith, and they did, good faith. But over time, they saw the opportunity to feed themselves and enrich themselves. And I don't mean Nancy Pelosi on the left. The right did the same thing. They all did. Mm-hmm. They all did.
Right.
And they will continue to do it until we stop them or until we go bankrupt. Which comes first? We'll probably bankruptcy. Anyway. Yeah, I love your podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
It's the Command Your Brand Show.
No, it's not. Your podcast.
Oh, my podcast. Oof. That's a good one. I haven't come up with a name for it yet.
Well, I think you should.
I'm going to have to definitely look into it. I think it's a good idea. Actually, I do like these kinds of conversations because it's just something that I've always been interested in. And, it gets a little bit, I don't know, it's just my environment growing up and the people that I was associated with, the conversations that I always had. I was always a little bit disillusioned to the propaganda that was being shoved down my throat. But at the same time, who knows how much propaganda was able to slip past those things. And that's
Oh
what just
yeah.
always gets very
How do you
interesting.
differentiate? It's very difficult.
Oh, yeah. And
Even
also to
with
keep us.
even with AI, it's
Mhm.
difficult because you got ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, Claude. I use them all because I like to ask the question to ChatGPT and
Mhm.
then double check it with Claude, kind of get them in an argument because they're all looking at similar but different databases. And I have
Mhm.
my opinion. I want to hear what their opinion is. So,
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, it's conspiracy theory. When you look on like YouTube, it's full of conspiracy theories. It's hard to really differentiate to see what's real truth. But I
Mhm.
think podcasts, well-informed people like yourself, that have legitimate questions and challenging the the host, challenging the person on there. What are they? Everybody's selling something. I'll give you a hack. I know you got to run. Here's a hack that you can use. So I worked with Stephanie Seneff years ago at MIT, and she is super scientist. She wrote the book Toxic Legacy, but her main issue was glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Monsanto's herbicide Roundup. So
Mhm.
glyphosate, this is a glycine molecule. This is a phosphate. When you do that, that's called glyphosate.
Okay.
Glyphosate. It kills your gut bacteria. Number one. Now, when they did that, I don't know if they did it purposefully and they just didn't know what was going to happen, but that's my opinion. The cascade of disease all flows from that one action.
Hmm.
And I explain it in detail, but the chemistry gets a little heavy. But here's the hack. Another word that starts with GLY, glycine.
Mhm.
Okay, that's an amino acid. It's not sugar,
Right.
and it's sweet.
Hmm.
Let me repeat that. It's a sweet amino acid. Well, wait a minute. How's that possible? Well, it is. You need to taste it. Very inexpensive. Looks like sugar. Tastes like sugar. It's granular, and you can put it in your food to break the sugar addiction. Number one, and number two, it pushes out the glyphosate out of your body because your microbiome is competing for glycine or glyphosate, and you want to push the bad guys out and keep the good
Mhm.
guys. And that's my hack. You don't need any medicine. Just go with that. What do
That's
you think of
excellent. I really like that. I really do because it's always a very fun thing for me. I look at these different things, and with all the conspiracies floating around all the time, it makes it very hard to have hope and for everything that's
Yes.
going on.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we have to have hope because hope is the only way that's going to push us through everything. And having things like that could just make my life a lot easier and really give proper attention to myself and anybody else listening, anybody's willing to hear these messages and really help push forward everything. Yeah, that's what I like. I like that very much, and that's what I'm always looking for because I think the moment we give up, looking for the truth and really kind of bettering ourselves, that's where the criminals just win.
Yep. Yep.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. I'll definitely take a look at it. You said glycine.
Glycine.
Perfect. I'll definitely look into that. And I'm also going to go ahead and purchase your books and make sure I get them over here because I am desperately curious to see everything else that you have to say. And I also don't want to steal your time for the rest of the day. I think, again, we can probably talk for the next couple of days and not notice it.
And I have. I have. Yeah, it's just
Perfect.
a passion of mine, but I was trained by the best of the world, and I was
Yeah,
very fortunate. So that's why I wrote the
definitely
books.
perfect. And now, speaking of that, for anybody who wants to, I guess, get a hold of you or get some more information with you, what would be like a good website for them to reach out to?
Well, I have my regular practice, and then I have my where is my phone number here? So my stem cell clinic is qstemcells.com, and my phone number is 480-841-5185. So it is 480-841-5185, and it's qstemcells at gmail.com, and the website is qstemcells.com. I think
Perfect.
I correct that.
Perfect. And just to clarify, Q is in the letter Q, stem cells?
Letter Q. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, I'll make sure that gets put down. So I make it very easy for anybody who's watching the video could just click on it and make sure that he can get a hold of you. And again, thank you honestly so much for spending the time with me today. It was a very enlightening conversation. I very, very much enjoyed it.
What do you think Joe will think about it?
I think that he would probably be very interested in having this conversation. I would love to see where you and Joe go down.
Stories for him that I don't even know if he can handle.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
That I would love. Perfect. Okay, great. So thank you again for your time today. And as a reminder, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. He's floating around all the time. It makes it very hard to have hope and for everything that's going on. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we have to have hope because hope is the only way that's going to push us through everything. And having things like that, it could just make my life a lot easier and really give proper attention to myself and anybody else listening, anybody's willing to hear these messages and really help push forward everything. Yeah, that's what I like. I like that very much. And that's what I'm always looking for, because I think the moment we give up looking for the truth and really kind of bettering ourselves, that's where the criminals just win.
Yep. Yep.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. I'll definitely take a look at it. You said glycine?
Glycine.
Perfect. I'll definitely look into that. And I'm also going to go ahead and purchase your books and make sure I get them over here because I am desperately curious to see everything else that you have to say. And I also don't want to steal your time for the rest of the day. I think, again, we can probably talk for the next couple of days and not notice it.
And I have. Yeah, it's just a passion of mine, but I was trained by the best of the world, and I was very fortunate. So that's why I wrote the books.
Perfect. And now, speaking of that, for anybody who wants to, I guess, get a hold of you or get some more information with you, what would be like a good website for them to reach out to?
Well, I have my regular practice, and then I have my, where's my phone number here? So my stem cell clinic is qstemcells.com, and my phone number is 480-841-5185. So it is 480-841-5185, and it's qstemcells at gmail.com. And the website is qstemcells.com. I think I correct that.
Perfect. And just to clarify, Q is in the letter Q, stem cells?
Letter Q. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, I'll make sure that gets put down. So I make it very easy for anybody who's watching the video could just click on it and make sure that he can get a hold of you. And again, thank you honestly so much for spending the time with me today. It was a very enlightening conversation. I very, very much enjoyed it.
What do you think Joe will think about it?
I think that he would probably be very interested in having this conversation. I would love to see where you and Joe go down.
I have some stories for him that I don't even know if he can handle.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
That I would love. Perfect. Okay, great. So thank you again for your time today. And as a reminder, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes.